G'day Eagles fans, welcome back to True Eagle in the wake of a 26-point loss at Adelaide Oval to Port Adelaide in a game that was at times great, at times really frustrating, and then I've sort of come full circle on it. And after being pretty much on every aspect of the spectrum of emotion with this game, I've kind of settled now to being somewhat comfortable with what took place for a few reasons. So you may remember last week I told you guys I was an idiot and I booked my flight home to Melbourne, where I now am, for like halftime of the Eagles game. As it happens, my flight was delayed, so I did catch fragments of it, and I've now caught up on it. But I was actually at my sister's house. We were playing Settlers of Catan, and I was the banker, so I was supposed to be engaged in that. But as soon as the game started, and I told myself I wouldn't follow it as it went because I had to focus on my family. But I sort of, popped the score open on the side there as I was meant to be dealing the cards, and kept seeing that we were kicking goals, and then we were like 3 or 4 goals in front, and I was like, play it cool, Jesse, don't let them know that I'm more invested in this game than the game of Catan, which I won, by the way. But anyway, managed to, listen to it in 6PR on the car, and then when I got to the airport at the departure lounge, I was watching a bit on my phone in the last 10 minutes. So, but yeah, as I said, I think I personally experienced the full spectrum of emotions watching that game. I think by the end of it, I was annoyed, and when I looked back on the fullness of the game, I was like, we didn't actually play that well for large periods of the game. We got out to a great lead, and that first quarter was excellent. And then throughout the course of the game, we kind of got butchered, which was what was frustrating me, albeit we were still in front at 3/4 time. So that's definitely something that's positive. But when I really thought about it, I was like, oh, we were bested and quite well beaten for a large part of that game. And then at like 2 a.m, I got to my house here in Melbourne, and I chucked on McQualter's press conference, and I listened to what he said, and I was like, oh, actually, maybe I have no real business being frustrated with West Coast. I mean, at the end of the day, we did compete. We did try really hard. And now we're kind of like in this period of the season where we maybe have one winnable game next week against Richmond, but for me personally, with so many key players out, we're really just hoping, or if I'm kind of just hoping, that we show up to every game, are really competitive, hopefully beat Richmond, but generally speaking, just limit the damage and then regroup for next year with a full pre-season and off-season to get us right. So from that point of view, I mean, we did throw everything at that game. We just weren't quite good enough. And then you also factor in, we had some adversity going into this game. Jack Graham's suspension is announced the morning of the game, if I'm not mistaken. I saw it on Instagram, the AFL Instagram. And then that was followed not long after by Liam Ryan being ruled out with soreness. So 2 experienced players that do make us better also leaving the team before the game starts. It's actually kind of a wonder we were even competitive in that game. We were competitive, to give us some credit for that. Like, just quickly on Jack Graham, I mean, I don't have too much to say about it. He did a bad thing, and he's copped a 4-week suspension. I don't really have any thoughts on that. It's a dumb mistake to do. I think suspension is fair enough, but he's copped his whack, so I don't really feel the need to weigh into this. It's actually a topic I've talked about previously on the True Footy YouTube channel. I agree with the stance to not condone that kind of language. I mean, I've seen some discussion online about how there are some quirks in our game. Like, you can hit someone pretty hard and concuss them and spend less time out than, say, calling someone a word. And I do understand the logic of that, but look, it's unacceptable. He's copped the 4-week whack. I'm annoyed at him, but, he's copped a suspension. It's a reasonable punishment. I'm happy to move on from that, albeit frustrated we are now out with a midfielder that he's no star, but we could certainly use him in the team. So him out doesn't help. As an aside, on McQualter's press conference, I don't know if anyone watched it, but that was the angriest I've seen McQualter in a press conference, and it was because he was being antagonised about the journalists asking about West Coast's process, because we didn't, go straight to the AFL when this has happened, which is apparently the policy. I don't know. It was an annoying watch. If you bothered to watch it, let me know what you thought. So getting back to the game at hand, when you factor in those 2 outs, actually made us the least experienced team we've been all year, with 64.1 games of average experience. I think it's just handy to use that as a metric. We actually got younger for this game, and I think that's the youngest we've been all year. A couple of weeks ago, we had 67, and we were younger again in this game, thanks to Graham and Ryan missing. So for context, the next youngest side was at 83, or the least experienced side was at 83. and Richmond was at 94. So that's 30 games per player more experience than us. So that is some context. I know Richmond actually won, but I think we possibly would have beaten Essendon too, to be honest. When you see stuff like that, and then you compare the midfields, where we got destroyed in this game. The midfield battle was very, very one-sided. You've got Zach Butters had like 38 possessions. Ollie Wines had a whole stack of clearances. I think he had the most on ground. Jason Horne-Francis and Willem Drew, you compare that in experience as much as anything. I mean, obviously Horne-Francis is young, but he's still 2 years older than Reid. And then there's Hewitt, Hoff and Hall. Those were our four most primary midfielders in this game. Harley Reid had a really good game, I thought. Obviously, we can discuss, what happened in terms of the fighting that happened in this game. But in terms of the performance, he actually had a really solid game. So when you say it like that, like you give up such a disadvantage in the midfield, it's kind of a wonder we were, in that game for as long as we were. And it was probably like 3.5 quarters. We could have realistically won the game. So having missed the first quarter, it took me a little while to realize exactly how that played out. I was wondering, were we simply just more efficient with our opportunities before the weather, started to take a turn, and that absolutely dried up for us, ironically. But looking at the numbers of it, we were plus 14 in contested ball, if I'm not mistaken. I remember hearing that on the 6PR coverage of this game. Plus 14 in contested ball in a quarter is a smashing, assuming that's accurate. We ended up getting beaten in that stat quite convincingly, but for a quarter, it's pleasing to see that we weren't just simply more efficient than them, which is rare for us anyway, but it's pleasing that we really earned that 6-goal first quarter. We also had 17 inside 50s to their 8. We had 9 scoring shots to 4, kicked 6 goals 3 to 2 goals 2. And there was a slickness to the way we played, having watched it back, which was great. Again, the conditions obviously took hold. And I was actually thinking, as it gets wetter, are we the sort of team that would be better in the more scrappy conditions? In theory, yes, but our ability to score completely dried up from this point. But best first quarter since round 4 2021. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that was against the Saints, and I think we lost that game, which is kind of funny. If it's the game I'm thinking of, we were at Marvel, we got way in front. We ended up falling into a hole that we have never come out of, by the way. But look, 6 goals, 3 in a quarter, particularly a first quarter. First quarters have been a problem for us for years. And look, it was a great first quarter. And I'm pleased to see that we actually earned that quarter, earned that dominance. That wasn't just us getting lucky. That, to me, gives me some confidence and belief, because if we put in a great performance for a period of a game and it's not a fluke, I think that is something that we can build on. And at the end of the day, if we fade late in games, well, it's just not something that I am yet going to get frustrated about. I think we're still so young and inexperienced that we can probably expect that to happen. As the game wore on, we got butchered in a lot of stats. So the clearances ended up 53-26. As I said, you compare the strength of those midfields and the inexperience in particular. I think McQualter said it. Reid's played 30 games as a midfielder. Hewitt's only really played this year as a midfielder, so 15 games there, 17 games, if that. Hutchinson, he named, who hasn't played that much midfield. Brady Hoff, who had a really quiet game, has played 10 games in the midfield. Clay Hall's played 5. So when you map it out like that, it's hard for me to sit here and say, well, the midfield should have done better. Maybe they could have had a better day, but it's very easy to see why Port Adelaide, who have a very strong midfield, that is a strength of their game, it's easy to see why they tore us up in that stat. They did beat us by 19 in contested ball, so that means after quarter time we were minus 33. That's a battering. Plus 3 uncontested. It was just sort of a reflection that we were able to link up a little bit better, particularly in the first half, I suppose, than we normally are. We also spent 90 minutes time in front in this game. So it does, you look back at quite a number of games this year, and I don't know if I'd say we really let this slip. I think the loss was kind of inevitable, looking at it in the fullness of time. I saw it coming even when we were in front. But there's a lot of games now. I think I read a post on Big Footy, forgive me, I forget who it was, but I think there's been 8 games this year where we've had meaningful leads. So we had 5 goals up against Brisbane, 5 goals up against Essendon, lose those games. We had a lead against Richmond. Don't know how big that was. Forgive me, I've actually got it now. It was from total Judge Shanks. And Melbourne's another one. We had a 10-point lead in the third quarter. Richmond, St Kilda, obviously. North, we got an 18-point lead. Collingwood, we had an 8-point lead in the third quarter. And then, of course, this game where we got 25 points in front. So that's 8 games there where we had a lead that would generally be considered a winning lead, especially when it's nudging up to 5 goals, right? and yet we're 1 win and 7 losses out of all of those 8 games. So I suppose it's kind of a two-sided coin. Like, obviously I have an issue running out games, but at least we're generating enough in those games to build those leads, and then we fall away. So I'm comfortable with that considering everything I've just said. What we do have is a really bad trend of not scoring, generally at all. Like our total scores seem to end up in the same spot regardless of how well we've played. So the last 6 results I've got for you. We scored 61 against Port Adelaide in a game where we played well. We scored 52 last week against GWS. We played terribly. 59 against Collingwood, one of our better performances of the year. 52 for the previous 2 weeks, and one of those I think we should have beaten North Melbourne, and I can't remember for the life of me who the other 52 was, but that's just 6 scores there between 61 and 52. Prior to that, 73 against Geelong, we did play well that day. Another 62 against Adelaide, I think that was. And then one win of the year, we scored 108 points, which would be the only time we scored 100 points otherwise this year. So this trending continued in this game. We were 39 at quarter time. If you do that 4 times, you're on 156 by my quick maths. And we end up with 61. We only kicked 3 goals 4 after quarter time. So look, Port Adelaide went to work on us and they started beating us around the ball. And I think it was inevitable. But the fact of the matter is we were well beaten for 3 quarters. Port Adelaide just took their time getting in front. On the point of individuals, I will give Harley Reid some credit here. It was an interesting game from him and Horn Francis going head to head. I don't know where I sit on this. Like, on the one hand, I do get that he probably does get distracted. I mean, I don't argue too hard against that. He does, and it's a little bit frustrating. But in this particular game, if I'm honest, I was sitting there going, I'm glad he's getting stuck into these Port pricks because they were really pissing me off as well. That was just heat of the moment stuff. I have no hatred of Port Adelaide or their players, but like, I kind of enjoyed him getting stuck into them, and he was by far and away our best player. He just didn't have support. That doesn't mean he doesn't need to pull his head in a little bit. McQualter was quite critical of him in the press conference as well. But, I think Horn Francis gives as good as he gets. I think Butters, with his attitude, gives as good as he gets as well. I've also, again, I don't want to have a drive-by on the opposition. I do this sometimes, but I'll say this and temper it with the fact that I've seen Port Adelaide fans say this. So this is not an attack. I think from what I've seen, a lot of people are saying the same thing. It was a bit cringy of Port Adelaide, who have ruined their season by playing so terribly so often, but also are still a good team and are not in the mix for finals, to battle that hard to get in front of West Coast and then start getting mouthy. I think that was cringy. A little bit like Frederick doing the backflip in the Derby a few years ago, which I have not let go of. I thought that was cringy, so there was a part of me wanting Harley to get stuck into him. But as I said, I've seen Port Adelaide fans make that comment too, so it's not an aggressive point. I'll leave it there, but it was something I was thinking during the game. Yeah, so Harley had 27 touches a goal, 7 tackles, 6 clearances. He's putting together some good form. His efficiency was off, but I reckon most players were. Mind you, he is inefficient most weeks. I would just love to see him have, maybe not an equal, but a few players that are genuine AFL midfielders playing with him that are ready-made. I think he's crying out for that. Brady Hoff had 9 possessions. I'll just highlight this as another game where he kind of got lost. He was playing in the midfield. I did my young talent video the other day, and I just didn't put him in the top tier talent because I think he can be that, but we just don't know if he's a midfielder. In this game, he was not able to get his hands on the footy at all. I thought Harry Edwards had a really good game. I've seen a lot of credit for him online. I am still a little bit dirty about that goal he conceded where Horn Francis kicked it through his legs. I thought that was a really poor moment from Harry, but look, over a number of weeks now, he's put together some form and now allows me to relax and say, okay, we've got one key back sorted. I don't know how good he's going to be, but he is AFL standard. He's playing really well. So good on you, Harry. It's good to see that with some continuity, and now he's around about 50 games. He's now starting to become the player that obviously people believed he would be. As for individuals, I don't know how many others I want to name. I thought Baker provided a bit. I thought it was a fairly good team effort for when we were playing well. I liked the games with Jack Williams and Shanahan. It was confusing to see who came back into the side. Like, we had 2 come out and only 1 laid in, which I think was Noah Long from memory. So I was confused. I was like, who else came into the side? And then it clicked very much later. Jack Williams was dropped and came back into the side. But 2 goals from set shots and marks. I thought it was solid. Shanahan also another glimpse of the future. So not sure who else I want to highlight, but I had a fragmented view of this game. I have watched it back, but still, I would love some input as to who you thought played well in this game. I am unsure if Malachi Champion is injured. I have seen a lot online suggesting Malachi will come out. I know he was subbed out fairly early, But then the Eagles official match report listed 0 injuries for West Coast. I don't know who writes that, whether it's AFL.com and they simply put it on the Eagles website. But the article seemed like it was written from an Eagles perspective, so I don't know what's the go there. So if somebody could let me know, did Malachi Champion get injured? I've obviously missed that. Either way, I'd imagine Liam Ryan comes back in next week. Tim Kelly was good in the waffle. Again, I haven't really decided who he would even come in for, or if it should come in at all. We'll see. But look, all in all, I have to give him a tick for the effort and the flashes. I mean, we could have easily not had the first quarter like that and been belted from the get-go. What it does do is continue this trend of, with the exception of GWS and Carlton, who touched us up, but for a long time now, the teams that are coming up against us all think they are playing horribly when they play us, and it's a product of our pressure, which was really good again against Port Adelaide. So they've actually had some good form around themselves. Like, they're out of the finals mix, but had they not started the year and had quite a few really poor performances, they've actually been going all right. So it is a good thing that we challenged them. We made it hard for them. We're so much less experienced than them and frankly have a lot of recruiting to do in terms of our top end talent and fleshing out our team. But to really drag them down to our level in some ways and then play our turnover game for patches of this game, look, no criticism from me. I'm not as excited about it as I was against Collingwood. I thought that was an even better performance. But it is certainly leagues above how I thought we showed up against GWS and how we started against Carlton, that's for sure. So yeah, again, another tick, albeit frustrating game to lose. So let me know in the comments, Eagles fans, what did you think of the game? What are some things that I didn't mention from this game? Again, I'm still dirty on myself for not being able to watch it properly in the moment. But I think we're live streaming West Coast versus Richmond on the True Footy live stream this weekend as well. So on the True Footy YouTube channel, we'll be doing it, Dylan and myself. So I'm definitely not missing that game. And I will certainly endeavour never to miss another Eagles game again for the rest of the time. But let me know in the comments, guys, what you think. And I'll see you in the next one. Up the Eagles.